This is continuing coverage in the trial of Alex Murdaugh from True Crime Today.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage. I'm Tony Bruschi. Segment number 4 is what we're about to enter in the trial of Alex Murdaugh here on the 22nd day of testimony on the 24th of February, 2023. Let's go to the courtroom.
About to go to the August 2021 interview, but between that June 10th interview and the August interview, you were not working very much. Is that correct? If at all?
No, I definitely wasn't working very much. I think I was working a little bit, but no, not very much at all.
Did you go to Johnny Parker to borrow $250,000 in order to cover the Ferris fees?
I did.
You did?
I did.
Did you tell him what that was for?
No, I did not tell him what that was for.
Did you go to Russell Lafitte at Palmetto State Bank and get $350,000 in order to help cover some of the Ferris fees that you had taken to send to Chris Wilson?
I did.
And did you get those fees before you signed any paperwork or documentation?
I've heard testimony about that in this case, but I can't tell you the specifics of that.
Okay. You don't recall that?
Do I recall when I signed paperwork? No, sir.
You don't recall that you got the money a month before you had to sign any paperwork?
No, sir, I don't recall that.
Call your phone being in the console. But
I'm not disputing that, but I don't recall it.
Did you go to your best friend Chris Wilson and convince him to cover $192,000, the remaining $190,000, in order for him to send that email to your law firm as if those fees had been there all along?
I spoke to Chris Wilson and did not have the full amount of the fees, and I got Chris Wilson to put the remaining fees in his trust account.
And when you did that, you didn't tell him the truth about your life. You just asked him to cover you, correct?
No, I did not tell him.
And he agreed to do that because of his belief of who you really were, or who he thought you were.
He agreed to do that for whatever reasons. I assume that was a big part of it.
And once that $600,000 was transferred, Chris Wilson sent an email to you saying those fees had been there, were in his trust account, correct?
That is correct.
And then you forwarded that email to Lee Cope and Jeannie Seconder, correct?
I know I forwarded it to Jeannie, and I've heard that testimony about forwarding it to Lee Cope, so I believe that's correct.
Okay. Why'd you not get it all from PSB?
Because at that time, there were limitations on how much I could borrow because MAGS was passed. And so I was limited.
Okay.
I couldn't get a loan against Moselle and had to get a loan against Palmetto State. Against Edisto.
Going to the third interview. All right, I'm going to go to 1745. apparently having some technical difficulties. Jury's seen this, so, I mean, again, you repeated the same lies over and over again,
I did.
effortlessly and convincingly.
I don't know about that.
Well, they can see it there.
I agree with that.
Nobody yelled at you.
Nobody yelled at me. Nobody, none of these guys were ever discourteous to me. Like,
Nobody what?
I said, none of those guys were ever discourteous to me. You made a comment earlier that David Owens was mean or something about being mean, and he was never mean to me.
All right. But you decided to lie in part because you distrusted David Owen.
I distrusted SLED in general, and I particularly distrusted who I thought was David Owen at the time,
Okay.
who turned out not to be David Owen.
So, wait a minute. I want to be clear. You're saying now you thought that this was some David Owen that had something to do with Greg Alexander 10 years ago.
No, sir. And I'm not saying that now. I said that all along.
Uh-huh.
The person that I saw and watched in Greg Alexander's trial that was clear to me was just, it was terrible what they did to Greg Alexander. And the person at SLED who was responsible for that was a guy named David. All right, and I'm not even getting into his last name. I thought that David Owens that night was that guy. Later, down the road, and it was a while, I checked into that and I found out that I was mistaken, that it was not David Owen.
So when we went back and we spent a lot of time going through that first statement, you're telling me now that you were sitting there thinking that this was a completely different guy the whole time, and that was on your mind during that entire interview.
Yes, at the time,
All right.
I thought that David Owen, no, I didn't think David Owen was a different person. I thought that David Owens was the person that my dad and I had watched. Just, I mean, my dad and I truly thought evidence was
Yeah, you said that
manufactured,
part.
and I thought it was David Owen, and I was wrong about that. But that's what I thought that night.
Any other factors or details you want to add about your decision?
I want to answer any question you have,
No,
Mr.
no, I mean,
Waters.
let's, any more?
Do you have any more questions, sir?
No, I mean, any more about your decision to lie. I mean, I just want to, let's get it all out now. Okay.
If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them, sir.
All right, well, I do. Tell me about the replacement blackout. You initially told law enforcement that you weren't sure whether or not there was one, correct?
Oh, no, sir, you're absolutely wrong about that.
What did you say then?
Shortly after this, it became being told that Paul's gun had been stolen. And the one you heard talk about being stolen from the thing. And I'm not sure how I learned this, but I learned that somebody, I believe SLED had gone to John Bedingfield, who made those guns, and could only find paperwork for 2 blackouts, one of which they were saying was stolen in 17. And that's what they were telling me. And I was certain and told them that I was certain that there was a third one.
But initially, in June 8th and June 10th, or June 10th, you were saying that you thought that y'all had replaced it, and then you kind of wavered and then eventually said you did replace it, correct?
I don't believe that's correct. No,
You
sir.
don't believe that's correct?
No, I don't believe that's
Did you
correct.
say to law enforcement that you thought that the third gun, the replacement blackout, had gone missing in Christmas of 2020?
It did go missing in Christmas of 2020.
So you're telling them that one also had been missing 6 months prior, correct? Answer my question first, and then you can explain. Did you all tell law enforcement that that gun had been missing since Christmas time?
I told law enforcement that when we looked for it at Christmas time, we could not find it.
Okay.
And that was accurate. We looked for it when we were trying to shoot hogs, when we had a group of people out there, and we could not find it.
Okay, but you now know that it was there as late as turkey season.
No, sir. I know that Will Lovin and Paw Paw had it right before turkey season, like Will Lovin testified to.
So it was around, actually.
It was around there at some point in time there, yes, sir.
So you're saying it got stolen a second time, or you just don't know?
No, I'm not.
The 12-year-old stole it a second time?
I never said a 12-year-old stole any gun, Mr.
Sorry, the
Waters.
5'2" people stole it a second time?
I don't know that it was stolen. I just know that when we looked for it at Christmas time, we couldn't find it. And I know this. I know that I hadn't seen that gun in a long time. I've heard the testimony that people who were at my house using guns and hunting with us all the time, Rogan, Buster, they didn't, I can't remember about Buster, but there were several people who didn't even know that gun had been replaced. So that tells me that that gun did not stay where our regular guns were. And I know that I didn't see it there, and that tells me that they didn't see it there.
Of course you didn't see it there, because it's got to be missing, right, Mr. Murdaugh?
Ask that
Yeah,
question
one more
again.
circumstance for your latest story to work is that it's got to be missing as well. It was when you told law enforcement it was missing at Christmas time. Now we've had testimony at this trial, and now you're still claiming that you never saw it. It must have been kept somewhere else. Where else would it have been kept?
It could have been kept anywhere, Mr. Waters, the way Paul did guns, the way guns were handled around there. I was terrible about that.
You're terrible about that.
I should have been stricter.
But you know that that third gun was fired right outside the gunroom door in turkey season of 2021, correct?
I know that now, based on what Will Lovin said.
And you know it was also fired across the street at y'all's shooting house around that same time, don't you?
No, sir, I don't know that, but I know that I would assume that it was fired at the shooting range, but I don't have any reason to believe it was done in close proximity to that time.
A few months go by, a couple months go by, and you get confronted about your thefts from the law firm, correct?
September of 21.
And unlike June the 7th, when Jeannie confronted you, this time they had unassailable evidence, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, they had,
No wiggling out of this one, correct?
I didn't try to wiggle out of this one.
Well, you've been wiggling before, though, right? You wiggled when you stole your brother's money twice, correct?
Well, I admit almost all of these things, Mr. Waters, but that's one of the things that I take dispute with,
Which one?
that I stole that money that you're referring to.
You're going to dispute that? Let's hear about that then. Tell me why you dispute cashing that check twice.
I don't dispute cashing that check twice.
But you're going to tell this jury that you accidentally didn't realize that you were supposed to be receiving some $125,000 check or $120 however $1,000 check 2 times. How many $120,000 checks do you receive?
I got that check, and this is several months after. I mean, you can look at my finances, and you can see how I was doing. I didn't balance a checkbook, but the fact of the matter is, when I got that check, I asked about it, and I was told mistakenly that it was for me, that I had I had participated in that year-end thing, which I did sometimes, not often, but sometimes. Apparently, a new check got cashed. I cashed that check. Then a year later,
Yeah, where did you keep that one for a year?
I don't know where it was. It was obviously in my desk. But, Mr. Waters,
So you found it in your desk.
no, I didn't find it.
Well, you said it was obviously in your desk. So you remember that? You remember finding it in your desk?
No, I remember when we,
Did you go to finance and say, I just found this year-old check? Is this right?
no,
No, you took it to the bank, didn't you?
no, sir, I didn't.
Not allowing Mr. Murdaugh to answer the question.
So when this came up, when this came up, that check got cashed. There's no way that I can have a check in our law firm with the way accounting is, and that I can cash a check twice and think that's impossible. So to cash a check that's already been checked, there's no question it's going to throw that off. What happened is we used to get a rent check, we get little checks, I'd have checks, and they pile up, the small checks. That check got mixed in, and it got sent to the bank, and it got deposited.
Keep going.
And that was a year after.
Okay.
But I do dispute that I stole that money. That money.
All right. Well, I mean, you brought it up. So any of the other money you dispute stealing?
No, sir, you brought it up. I was just telling you that was the one I disputed.
Okay. All right. And you heard Ronnie Crosby and Mark Ball testify about that, correct?
I heard Ronnie and Mark testify about what they thought about it. Yes, sir.
All right. You testified yesterday about the side of the road,
Yeah, yes, sir.
and then you heard the testimony during the state's direct case about what you said on the 911 call. You heard that, didn't you?
I did hear that.
You heard the 911 call where you said you'd been attacked by an unknown assailant and described him?
I did.
And you saw the video from the ambulance where you said you'd been attacked by an unknown assailant and described him?
I did.
And you heard the testimony from Ryan Kelly where you, again, went in detail and described this attack from an unknown assailant?
I did.
And you heard the testimony about your interview on September 6th with law enforcement, in which you went into great detail and again described this unknown assailant?
I did.
And you heard the testimony, and in fact the image was put in, about how you sat down with a SLED sketch artist and spent a period of time with her going forward and creating an image of the supposed assailant.
I did sit down with her. I was in the hospital, and they came in, sat down with me, asked me a bunch of questions. I answered their questions, and
Yes, you did. You
it
sat
came
there.
it came up with a composite. Yes, sir.
Sat there and answered their questions just as effortlessly and convincingly as you've been trying to do for the past 2 days. Isn't that correct?
No, sir. That's not true. In that hospital, I couldn't sit still. I was standing up. I was walking around. I was using the bathroom with the lady sitting right there. I was 2 days into not taking, 3 days into not taking pills like I had been. So, no, it wasn't effortlessly. But, I told them what I told them. I don't dispute that I lied.
It was all lies, though, is the point, correct?
It was.
I mean, you're saying withdrawals, but you still were able to pull off lies in great detail. Correct?
I lied to them.
And the lie that you told of an unknown assailant was to try to make people think that the, quote, real bad guys were back again to finish the job. Isn't that true?
No, sir, that's not true.
That's not the effect that you intended that story to have? Did it have that effect on people that you knew? Isn't that the exact effect that it had?
I don't think there's many people that believe that. No, sir. I know the people that were, the people that were closest to me didn't believe that. So, no,
When
sir.
accountability is at your door, Mr. Murdaugh, bad things happen. Isn't that true?
When accountability is
After
at my
your
doorstep,
life- Go ahead.
bad things happen. What do you mean by bad things?
June 7th happened. September 4th happened.
I don't believe that June the 7th happened because accountability issues were at my doorstep. Now, I do believe in September that I tried to get a man to help me kill myself because issues were at my doorstep.
Every time, or I'm sorry, for the first time in your life of privilege and prominence and wealth, when you were facing accountability, each time suddenly you became a victim and everyone ran to your aid. Isn't that true?
I disagree with that, but what you're
Shame for you is an extraordinary provocation. Isn't that true, Mr. Murdaugh?
Hang on, let me just finish this. You seem to be implying 2 dates, June the 7th and September, and talking about accountability issues. And those, to me, those two things are totally different. There were no accountability issues on my doorstep on June the 7th.
That's what you say.
And in September,
Not what other people say.
I was trying to, well, no, been a lot of people, well, in September, that wasn't designed to gain me sympathy. That was designed for me not to be here because I didn't want my son to have to deal with the wake of the things that I had done.
But that's not the story you told. The story that came out of your mouth right away was the story of you getting attacked by some unknown assailant while you were trying to change a tire in run flats.
Well,
that's the story that you told.
That is the story I told, but that's because the man who shot me did not shoot me that day as I intended. And I had to have a story as to how I got shot, so I lied.
So you lied. And you're saying that people in your family and your friends didn't instantly believe that whoever these 12-year-old marauders were back to finish the job.
You keep using
And
the
it
term
happened just
12
2
years
hours
old.
after you'd been confronted by Chris Wilson.
I think probably some people may have thought that when it first happened, but I think like Randy, Ronnie, Mark, those guys, I think they knew very quickly that this was not, I think they knew this was something that I'd done.
Shame for you, I asked this before, but shame for you is an extraordinary provocation, isn't it, Mr. Murdaugh?
Shame for me is an extraordinary provocation. I don't like to be shamed.
The prospect of humiliating the legacy is an extraordinary provocation to you, isn't it, Mr. Murdaugh?
What do you mean by an extraordinary provocation?
It affects you deeply. It's your biggest concern, is it not?
No, that's not my biggest concern.
You're a middle-aged man like me?
I'm 54 years old. I'm not sure. You look like you're in better shape than me, so I don't know.
I was actually a couple of years behind you in law school, but we never knew each other, did we?
I never knew you, no, sir.
Had a very successful career up until this point?
You know,
Simple question.
and the answer to that is no, Mr. Waters. I was an addict for more than 20 years.
All right, so making millions of dollars over a decade is not having a successful career? Is that what you're going to tell the jury?
No, that's not a successful career. When you
Okay, well, let me put it
no,
like this.
hang on. Let me just.
All right, go ahead.
You know, it may have been what you perceive as a successful career, but, you know, I was the one who was fighting that. You don't have a very high self-esteem when you're an addict. So I don't deem myself a success.
All right. Would you agree that at least outwardly you were perceived as successful?
I made a bunch of money, if that's what you're wanting to get at.
No, I'm actually asking about the perception. You were perceived as a prominent,
I tried to be.
powerful lawyer.
How I was perceived,
president
I don't
of the
know.
trial lawyers.
I sure tried to be.
You lived a life of possessing authority.
Possessing authority?
Yeah, we saw the badges. You just admitted of your prominence in the legal community.
I don't think that I lived a life of possessing authority. I never saw myself as that way.
You don't think you lived a life of privilege?
I think I was very privileged.
But as we move to June of 2021, you were suffering from a drug addiction.
Absolutely.
Your father was terminally ill.
When?
As we move to June of 2021,
No, sir.
he was very ill.
He was very ill.
And you were coming to a point of financial crisis.
I was having financial issues like I'd had many times in the past.
Mr. Murdaugh, are you a family annihilator?
A family annihilator? You mean like, did I shoot my wife and my son?
Yes.
No. Would never hurt Maggie Murdaugh. I would never hurt Paul Murdaugh under any circumstances.
Say that.
Excuse me?
You say that, but you lied to Maggie, didn't you?
I did lie to Maggie
You lied to Paul.
sometimes.
You lied to your father.
I'm sure I did at some point.
Did you tell him all the stuff you'd been up to over the years before he died?
No, I didn't tell him.
Did you lie to your brothers?
About financial things,
Yes.
I would have lied to Randy at some point, I'm sure.
Did you lie to him about the last time you saw your wife and son alive?
I did.
Did you lie to their wives?
I'm sure I did.
Did you lie to Marion Proctor?
Yes.
Did you lie to Bart Proctor?
Yes.
Did you lie to the Brandstetters?
Yes.
Did you lie to your best friend, Chris Wilson?
Probably.
Did you lie to your other friend, Barrett Bulware, when you took his money?
No, sir.
No.
I didn't lie like I told you. I didn't lie directly to him. I lied to him by omission, like we talked about. I mean, I didn't talk to him. I didn't see him at that time.
Did you lie to your law partners?
I did.
Did you lie to them about the kennels?
Some of them.
Did you lie to Mark Ball?
Yeah, I believe, based on what Mark said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Ronnie Crosby?
According to what he said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Johnny Parker?
I don't believe I ever discussed that with Johnny.
Did you lie to him about the finances when you borrowed that money in July of 2021?
I don't know if I lied to him about. I don't think Johnny asked me. I don't think I had to lie to Johnny about that, so I don't know.
Did you lie? Well, you certainly didn't disclose to him the truth when you borrowed that $250,000, did you?
I did not tell him what I was going to use it for.
I mean, didn't we say before that not telling the whole truth is the same as telling a lie?
Sure it is.
You don't think that's a lie, though?
I'm just saying, Mr. Waters, I'm not taking issue with that, but I don't even know that Johnny and I mean, Johnny had loaned me money numerous times. It wasn't any long sit-down discussion where Johnny wanted to know exactly what I was doing with it. That conversation would have been, I needed it. Johnny was always willing to help me, and that would have been the conversation. So on that specific event, did I lie to him? I don't know.
Yeah, he ended up being out $477,000, didn't he?
He ended up being out a lot of money.
And thank you for your qualifications as to that. Did you lie to Lee Cope?
I don't know. I don't know if Lee Cope was around when I said that or not.
Did you lie to Danny Henderson?
I did lie to Danny.
Did you lie to Jeannie Seconder?
About finances, yes, I did.
You didn't ever talk to her about the kennels?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Did you lie to Annette Griswold?
I did.
Did you lie to Christy Gerald, your other secretary or paralegal?
I don't believe she and I discussed. I would have at some point, I'm sure.
Did you lie to Michael Gunn?
I'm sure I did at some point, but I mean, Michael wasn't involved in any of this, so I don't know that any of this ever came up with Michael.
Did you lie to your clients? Did you lie to Pamela Pinckney?
I did.
Natasha Thomas?
I don't know that I dealt with Natasha, but I certainly lied about that.
Hakeem Pinckney?
Again, I don't know that I talked to Hakeem, but I certainly lied about that.
Arthur Badger?
I did.
The Plyler girls?
I'm not sure that I talked specifically to them, but I lied about that.
Dion Martin?
I lied to Dion.
Johnny Bush?
Yes.
Manuel Cristiani?
I didn't have any conversations with him, but I certainly lied about it.
Jamie Risher?
Yes.
Randy Drawdy?
Yes.
Jordan Jinks?
Yes.
Mary Duncan?
Yes.
Adriana Hay?
Yes.
Angel Gary?
Yes.
Christopher Anderson?
Yes.
Elise Mallory?
Yes.
Thomas Moore?
No.
You never lied to him? You just took his money. You never had to actually lie to his face, is what you're saying?
He and I never had a conversation, but I did take that. I did take that money.
Did you lie to Tony Satterfield just a couple of months before June 7th? We saw the text. You want me to get it out?
Just remind me. There's been a lot. Just remind me what it was.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 463.
And I don't remember the exact date. So
That was in April of 2021. Is that right? Where you text him and tell him how hard you're working on the case when in fact you had stolen millions of dollars from him? Tony Satterfield, who got up on the stand and told the jury about that?
I texted him on April 12th, so 5 weeks before June 7th.
Told him everything was okay. You're working hard, right? It's a complex case.
Yeah, I told him I was working on the case.
He was the son of your longtime housekeeper, Gloria.
I'm sorry?
He was the son of your longtime housekeeper, Gloria, who had served your family for many years.
That's correct.
And you stole millions from those boys.
I stole those funds.
And he and his family had started asking questions as we moved to June 7th. Didn't that happen?
No, I mean, there wasn't any rise in them asking questions. No, sir. I mean, he periodically checked in and asked me questions, but, you know, it had come out long before this, I believe, in the Island packet, that there had been a settlement of $500,000. But, I mean, that had been months and months, if I'm not mistaken. And so I didn't notice any uptick in Tony asking questions, and I don't believe that there was any uptick in Tony asking questions before June the 7th.
So you just gratuitously out of the blue decided to lie to him and send that text? Or were there things going on externally that caused you to need to head him off at the pass before further questions started to be asked about money you couldn't pay back at that point in time?
Nah, I don't think there was anything. I mean, on April 21st, I don't know what external factors you're talking about.
Do you want to explain that one anymore?
Explain what?
Whatever you want.
I just want to answer your questions, Mr. Waters.
Lied to everyone about the side of the road, that people that came to stop to help, and the ambulance folks, and the 911, and Ryan Kelly, and the composite sketch artist, and all of them, correct?
I lied to a lot of people about that.
You know why people lie, Mr. Murdaugh? Because they know they've done something wrong.
For the most time, I do.
And you've been able to lie quickly and easily and convincingly if you think it'll save your skin for well over a decade. Isn't that true?
I have lied well over a decade.
And you want this jury to believe a story manufactured to fit the evidence that you brought forth just yesterday after hearing this trial's worth of testimony.
No, sir, that's not correct.
Mr. Murdaugh, we went through this for a while, but you remember at the beginning of your testimony, I asked you whether or not you agreed that trying to explain your presence on the kennel video was the most important part of your testimony before this jury. You remember that? And you said, oh, not the most important. And I said, was it at least important? You recall that from yesterday?
Yeah, I recall you asking those questions, yes, sir.
And you agree it's important, don't you?
I agree that is an important component. But I think there's a lot of important components.
And you testified yesterday and during cross yesterday and cross today. It's kind of evolved on the fact of the factors that led you to decide to lie at some point during that interview with David Owen, correct?
I disagree with that. I don't think those factors have evolved. I mean, you've asked some more specific questions, but those factors are still the same factors. You may have asked questions and gained a little more detail, but those factors haven't changed.
But it was the dope paranoia. It was the fact that the deputy took your GSR. It was the fact that your law partners and Greg Alexander and the sheriff were telling you needed to have a lawyer before you talked to police. It was the factor that you got in the car with Dave Owen and thought he was somebody else from some case 10 years ago, correct?
That believing David Owens was the person involved in the case that I talked about was one of the factors that caused me to distrust SLED.
All right. And then also you said that they started asking you about, in that first interview, about your relationship with Maggie and Paula. And that's one thing you mentioned as well, correct?
And that was certainly something that contributed to me having paranoid thinking.
For the record, I'm playing the Daniel Green body cam video, 2026.
Crime scene in contact with them. He's also going to give us the assistance of a couple of key agents. How was that?
They are dead on that.
Just turn on those.
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
Where are you now? All right. Yeah, the police are here now. The police are here now. That's my brother.
Okay. When was the last time you were here with them? Or talked to them or anything like that?
It was earlier tonight. I don't know the exact time, but
Okay.
I left. I was probably gone an hour and a half from my mom's, and I saw them about 45 minutes before that.
That was Sergeant Green, correct?
Yeah, that was Sergeant Green.
And at that point in time, SLED was not there. No one had gotten GSR from you. Your law partners or Sheriff Hill were not there.
That's correct.
No one had asked you about your relationships. David Owen was not there.
That's correct.
But you still told the same lie. And all those reasons that you just gave this jury about the most important part of your testimony was a lie too. Isn't that true, Mr. Murdaugh?
I disagree with that.
Nothing further.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break now. Please do not discuss the case.
That wraps up segment number 4 of our continuing coverage in the trial of Alex Murdaugh. There is still more to come. Press subscribe so you don't miss any of our breaking updates, discussions on the case, and action from in the courtroom. I'm Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.